Hey, it's Surfer and Victorian Surf Report, Saturday the 25th of July, 2026. G'day everyone and welcome back to Hey, it's Surfing. Well, Victoria's coastline is still carrying the leftovers from a very energetic week in the Southern Ocean. The swell has eased a notch from yesterday, but the wind is still hanging around like a bloke at closing time who refuses to take the hint. There are waves right across the state today. Some are clean, some are enormous, and quite a few appear to have been assembled incorrectly. That's rich coming from a bloke who assembled the camera rig. Well, Dicky, you've got no arms, mate, so you can't assemble crap. We'll begin with the statewide setup, then move through the Surf Coast, Mornington Peninsula, Phillip Island and the Bass Coast and finish in East Gippsland. After that, we'll check the tides, the main hazards and what's shaping up for the week ahead. Lovely! A complete tour of every place Keith can't afford petrol to visit. The way the petrol prices are, Dicky, yeah, you're about right, mate. Gee, it's good to see that they've come down a bit though. First, let's separate the observed conditions from the forecast. At 7 o'clock this morning, Cape Otway was recording a westerly wind of 21 knots, gusting to 29. South Channel Island was sitting around 15 knots from the west, while Wilson's Promontory was recording 31 knots with gusts reaching 41. Further offshore at Hogan Island, winds were blowing at 36 knots and gusting to 41. Garbo Island in the Far East was recording a west-southwesterly at 28 knots with 36 knot gusts. These are real-time automatic observations and have not been fully quality controlled, but they confirm that the strong westerly airflow is already well established across Bass Strait. 41 knots? That'll remove your hat, your dignity and any loose change from your pocket. Yeah, sure will, Dicky. Are you okay, mate? You're not sounding the best today. Yeah, I'm fine. Just a big Friday. You know how it is sometimes. No, not really, Dicky. Don't know what you get up to, mate. The Bureau has a strong wind warning in place for the Central Coast today. Westerly winds are forecast at 20 to 25 knots, reaching 30 knots during the morning and early afternoon. Seas are running between 1.5 and 2.5 metres. The offshore southwesterly swell is between 1.5 and 2.5 metres through central waters, increasing to between 2 and 4 metres west of Cape Otway. Cloud and frequent showers remain part of the picture. Those figures describe the offshore marine environment. They are not breaking wave heights at the beach. Actual surf size depends on exposure, swell direction, period, reef shape, local sandbanks, and how much protection a break receives from the wind. So when the Bureau says 4 metres, don't stand at cosy corner with a tape measure and demand a refund. It's about right, Dicky. So after that comment, Dicky, we'll start here on the Surf Coast, and this is again the best overall region in Victoria today. The established Torquay reefs are protected from the worst of the westerly airflow, and the southwest swell still has enough size and period to keep the main breaks active. Model guidance around Torquay carries a strong southwest component near 12 seconds this morning, followed by an easing south-southwest swell through the remainder of the day. That guidance indicates the energy is declining but not disappearing. Breaking wave estimates are around 3 to 5 feet at the more protected Torquay reefs. Bells Beach and Winky Pop should generally be around 5 to 7 feet, with occasional larger sets where the southwest lines focus into the reef. Jan Jack and the more open coastline west of Bells will be larger and more exposed, with some locations still pushing into the 6 to 8 foot plus range. Those are estimates based on the Bureau's offshore swell forecasts, modelled period and local exposure, not direct measurements at any reef. 5 to 7 feet of bells, perfect. Keith can sit on the cliff and explain how he nearly went out. Like, get stuffed, Dicky. Are you kidding? Nearly went out. I'd be bloody out there way before you, mate. And if you think otherwise, show me what you got. The wind is generally west to west-northwest around Torquay, which is favourable for the premier reefs. However, it remains strong enough to create spray, hold surfers back on takeoff, and add texture to the more exposed sections. Regional guidance suggests the earlier morning and the period near dusk offer the best wind angles, with a rougher, more westerly influence during the middle of the day. The best window is therefore this morning before the strongest gusts, with a possible secondary improvement late in the day if the wind angles back towards west-northwest. Torquay Point and the smaller protected reefs should be the most manageable options. Bells and Winky Pop remain suited to experienced surfers comfortable with powerful reef surf and strong moving water. The tide at Lorne was low at 12:36 this morning, rose to a high of 2.16 metres at 7:59 and falls to a smaller low around 1:06 this afternoon before rising again a 2 metre high at 7:03 tonight. At Point Lonsdale, low tide was at 1:05 this morning. High tide arrives around 8:30. The afternoon low is near 1:11 and the evening high is around 7:29. The lower afternoon tide will sharpen some reefs and expose more rock around entries and exits. As the tide rises toward dusk, some breaks may gain consistency, but currents through reef channels will also strengthen. The main hazards are slippery rock platforms, powerful sweep, larger outside sets after quiet intervals, and difficult exits during squalls. The Surf Coast rates 7.5 out of 10 at a protected reef. The open beaches and exposed western reefs score considerably lower because of the wind and rawness. 7.5 out of 10? That's also the number of surfers in every 6-wave set. Whatever, Dicky. Jeez, I don't think it'll be that crowded today the way the conditions are, mate. Moving across to the Mornington Peninsula, and there is still plenty of size on the exposed back beaches. Current regional guidance places Gunnamatta around 6 to 8 feet, and that broadly matches the offshore southwest swell and the beach's direct exposure. Gunnamatta, St Andrews and Rye Back Beach should generally sit around 6 to 8 feet, with occasional larger waves at the deepest banks. Portsea Back Beach may also receive larger clean-up sets where the swell reaches the coastline more directly. These are estimated breaking heights rather than uniform conditions. 6 to 8 feet of Gunnamatta, very relaxing, isn't it? Like being chased through a washing machine by a fridge. Washing machine by a fridge. Oh, I've not heard that one before, Dicky. Yeah, it's a bloody good one, Keith. Yeah, chased through a washing machine by a fridge. The west to southwesterly airflow is the main problem. It is cross onshore or onshore across much of the open peninsula coast, creating broken faces, strong lateral drift, and rapidly shifting takeoff zones. The model guidance gives the open beaches a poor quality rating today, with west and west-southwest winds affecting the swell through the main daylight hours. There is no genuine premium window on the exposed beaches. The early morning offers the least developed sea state, but it is still rough and heavily wind affected. As the day progresses, the swell should gradually ease, but the westerly airflow remains strong enough to keep the surface untidy. The better strategy is to look for reduced exposure. Flinders and the western port side will be much smaller, but those locations offer more shelter from the southwest swell. Western Port itself has westerly winds of 10 to 15 knots, reaching 20 knots west of Sandy Point around the middle of the day. Sea increases to 1 to 1.5 metres before settling again toward evening.
So the back beaches are huge and terrible, and the sheltered side is tiny and windy. A beautifully balanced disappointment, that one.
Well, you can't bloody have it your way every time, Dicky. Anyway, using Point Lonsdale as the broad oceanside tide reference, the peninsula works through a high around 8:30 this morning, a low around 1:11 this afternoon, and another high near 7:30 tonight. That falling tide may expose more defined sandbanks, but it also increases the strength of rips through the deeper gutters. The incoming evening tide may help some sections hold more water, although it will not repair the wind quality. The main hazards are strong longshore sweep, heavy rips, difficult paddle outs, shifting banks, and larger sets breaking outside the regular takeoff zone. The exposed Mornington Peninsula's rate 3.5 out of 10. There is plenty of wave energy, but not much refinement. Protected locations rate slightly higher for safety and surface quality, although the surf will be dramatically smaller.
3.5 out of 10. That's a surf rating? Not the number of times Keith's checked whether the lens cap is still on.
Is the lens cap still on, Dicky? No, it's not. So keep a lid on it, mate. Meanwhile, Phillip Island is carrying substantial wave energy again today. At Cape Woolamaya, the Bureau's detailed model shows total wave heights close to 2.8 metres early, gradually easing through the day. The primary southwest swell is modelled near 2.3 metres early, dropping toward 1.8 metres tonight, while a sizable wind wave component remains in the mix. Guidance has Woolamaya around 2.3 metres at 13 seconds this morning, with cross onshore winds close to 35 kilometres an hour. In terms of breaking surf, Woolamaya is estimated around 6 to 8 feet, with larger waves at the more exposed banks. Forest Caves and the open Bass Coast should be in a similar range depending on the bank and the angle. Smiths Beach, Surfers Point and YCW will be considerably smaller, generally somewhere between 2 and 4 feet, but those breaks may offer a more realistic option under the westerly wind.
6 to 8 feet at Woolamaya? That'll clean the sand out of places you didn't even know you had sand.
Won't be much sand left on the beach after all this swell,
Yeah,
Dicky.
about right, Keith, about right. Yeah, won't be much sand on the beach. You'll be all pissed off somewhere else.
Yeah, that's about right, mate. The exposed beaches are cross onshore through most of the day, so expect broken faces and strong lateral movement. The wind may ease slightly later this afternoon, but the overall quality remains poor at Woolamaya. The best window is not a particular hour so much as a particular location. The more shelter you can find, the better the result. Kilcunda and the open Bass Coast will carry raw size, but those beaches will also have strong currents, heavy closeouts and fewer protected alternatives. Cape Patterson and Inverloch will be smaller and more manageable. Inside Western Port, Reel was only recording 5 knots from the west at 7 this morning. That observation should not be confused with the ocean side of the island, where the wind and wave exposure are substantially greater.
Real 5 knots? Woolamaya says survival documentary. Same island? Completely different legal department.
Well, the legalities so far, Dicky, is basically the topography of the landscape, right? So we've got to inform the viewers exactly how this works so they can get a great understanding of it all.
Yeah, I know.
At Stony Point, low tide was at 1:49 this morning. High tide arrives around 9:01 at 2.67 metres, followed by a low at 2:15 this afternoon and another high around 8:10 tonight. That large tidal movement will create strong flow through the entrances and channels of Western Port. The afternoon outgoing tide may intensify movement around exposed reef passages before the tide begins filling again. The primary hazards are deep gutters, heavy sweep, shifting channels, larger clean-up sets, and difficult exits at the exposed beaches. Phillip Island and the Bass Coast rate 4 out of 10 overall. The exposed coast has plenty of size but poor quality. The smaller protected beaches offer the better practical choice.
4 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 if your main goal is losing a board and meeting a lifeguard?
I think the lifeguards are packed up for the season, mate. Like, this time of the year down and around, the lifeguards aren't on the beaches patrolling whatsoever. They're only around those prime time, tourist, city slicker, bloody long weekends, school holidays. You know how it is, Dicky.
Oh, yeah, I know how it is. Bloody turns into a rat race around here, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, Dicky, it does. Yeah, it gets out of control. However, moving into East Gippsland, and this remains the most serious marine district today. The Bureau has a gale warning current for the East Gippsland coast. Westerly winds are forecast between 25 and 30 knots, reaching 35 knots in the far east early. Seas are between 2 and 3 metres, increasing to between 2.5 and 4 metres in eastern offshore waters. The west to southwesterly swell is forecast between 2 and 4 metres. At 7 o'clock this morning, Wilson's Promontory and Hogan Island were both gusting above 40 knots, while Garbo Island was recording west-southwesterly winds of 28 knots and gusts to 36.
36 knots, Gus, Garbo Island? The lighthouse has put in a transfer request.
The lighthouse wants to get out of there, mate. She's still standing though. It's been putting up with this kind of crap for years. So, look, I think its transfer request will get knocked back, Dicky. Because the swell contains a strong westerly component, it will not translate evenly onto every beach. Lake's entrance should remain much smaller than the offshore figures suggest, with estimated surf around 1 to 3 feet. 90 Mile Beach may produce 2 to 4 foot peaks where the banks and coastline line up with the swell. Cape Conran, Marlow and the more exposed beaches towards Mallacoota should see 4 to 6 feet, with larger waves possible at the strongest swell magnets. Those breaking wave heights are estimates based on direction and exposure rather than direct observations at each location. Central Gippsland waters are also under a strong wind warning, with westerly winds of 20 to 30 knots and seas around 2 to 3 metres. The swell therefore decreases from 1.5 to 2.5 metres toward 1 to 1.5 metres during the afternoon. There is no reliable clean window across the exposed East Gippsland beaches today. The wind remains the dominant factor. Sheltered locations may reduce the chop, but they will also lose much of the swell. At Lake's entrance, low tide was around 12:39 this morning and high tide at 5:49. Another low at 10:37, and the larger afternoon high arrives around 6:04 tonight. The rising afternoon tide will increase flow through the entrance. Bar conditions may remain dangerous even if nearby beach surf looks modest. The main hazards are gale force wind, confused seas, cross-shore currents and strong tidal flow near coastal entrances. East Gippsland rates 3 out of 10 today. There may be isolated workable waves, but much of the region is rough and difficult.
3 out of 10? Bring a longboard, a raincoat and a phone number of someone with a trailer.
Why a trailer, Dicky? Why a bloody trailer? Why would someone need to bring a longboard, a raincoat, and the phone number of someone with a trailer? Well, you got nothing to say, mate? Like, seriously.
Oh, don't worry about it, Keith. You just don't understand. Just forget about it.
Tides and statewide hazards. Across the central coastline, the morning high is followed by a lower tide around early afternoon. Water levels then rise again toward the evening. Western Port has the largest tidal range, with a high near 9 this morning, a low shortly after 2 and another strong high tonight. Lake's entrance moves through a late morning low before the afternoon tide begins filling. These are Bureau tide predictions and should be treated as regional references rather than exact timing for every individual surf break. The largest statewide hazard remains the combination of wind and moving water. The Bureau advises that wind gusts can be around 40% stronger than the forecast average. It also notes that the largest individual waves may reach roughly twice the forecast significant wave height.
Twice the forecast significant wave height? That's not a clean upset. That's the ocean checking whether your health insurance is current.
Yeah, we bloody better make sure the health insurance is current, Dicky. Maybe public liability too, the way these waves are coming in. They might just take a few bystanders straight off the shoreline. Council might be bloody a bit concerned.
You're so funny, Keith. Not.
Yeah, righto, Dicky. Expect rapidly changing conditions during showers and squalls. Keep track of your drift. Identify an exit before paddling out. And don't assume a protected car park means a protected lineup. Water temperature remains near the winter minimum. A sealed 4.3 steamer is a practical baseline, with boots and a hood worthwhile for longer sessions or rocky entries.
Boots and a hood? 4.3 wetsuit? You're not going surfing. You're being prepared for cold storage.
Oh, Dicky, that's the best one I've heard. Prepared for cold storage. Yeah, you're about right, mate. Bloody oath. Snap frozen. Well, moving on to the week ahead forecast. Let's see what Sunday has to bring. The first noticeable improvement, really. Across the central coast, westerly winds ease to 15 and 20 knots, although they may still reach 25 knots toward Wilson's Promontory during the morning. Sea eases to 1.5 metres. The southwest swell settles to around 1.5 to 2 metres, increasing to 2 or 3 metres in the far west. Inside Western Port, winds become west to northwesterly at 10 to 15 knots before easing further during the afternoon. That should improve surface conditions around Phillip Island and the peninsula's more protected locations. East Gippsland remains rougher for longer with a strong...
Oh, bloody hell, Dicky, what have you done? Pull the plug! Pull the plug, I've had enough of this. Oh, I'm so sick of this morning. Oh, you kidding, Dicky? What have you done? Oh my God.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Dicky's just ruined it for the morning. And, yeah. Hey, it's surfing.